Alina, this book is something else. She's saying, she's saying that the things that, that stand out to you, the things that you want to repeat and all of these things into your life. Listen, everything I've read
stands
so far,
out.
So I break it down into portions that I can manage.
This really was transformative.
Good evening and welcome to Club Conversations Series 6, where we are wrapping up. It is the finale. We are wrapping up with chapter 31 as we conclude the book. Wow, we're concluding. The Uncommon Achiever, written by Mike Murdock. I am Alina Lewis, and it definitely was my absolute pleasure to be joined in by Roll Rollocks of VisionWorks Solutions, impact strategist at VisionWorks Solutions, as well as being joined by Simone Nickham, impact coach at VisionWorks, as well as the founder of the Create Your Own Narrative initiative. Guys, hi and welcome. I am happy to have you back. How are you?
Good. 31 days in and better.
We are 31 days in. So, I love to ask what stood out to you as we wrapped up and we looked at chapter 31?
So I'll start. Mike Murdock was speaking about when pressure increases, those around you are affected and they are influenced. And their stress can affect you. It's so true. And because the constant demands often birth a level of impatience and mistakes. And I would say on both sides, pressure and mistakes on the person's side as well as my side. And during those moments, mercy is necessary. And I remember talking to a girlfriend of mine, and I was actually asking her advice on the SCA exam that my daughter wrote last year. It wasn't actually my daughter, it was this year. A cousin, a young cousin, was writing the exam, and I was asking her feedback in terms of what the child should do the day before. So she said, children are different. You have to know that person and what works best for them. Because sometimes this pressure that we're talking about, it could cause them to respond in a way where they might be overly anxious or they might be relatively calm, and that will determine how you would guide them the day before. So when I read this portion of what Mike Murdock said, that enduring those moments, what we do and how we treat with it, we need to be so careful. And that really stood out for me about an uncommon achiever.
Yeah. Roll, what about you?
Have a little bug in my throat there. Hello, good evening, all. I found it was very interesting that Mike Murdock would end a book about achievement talking about failure. That is very, very interesting, right? And the more I thought about it, I realized that pretty often achievement, success, the uncommon achievement has a price tag. It has a price tag, and that price tag is a number of failures, not once or twice. And it is what success is made of, right? At least one of the things that success is made of. So pretty often, we don't spend as much time on it, but if we think about it, there's so much written about it, and maybe it's something that should be more part of our discussion. But every great man, whether it was an inventor, a leader of any sorts, in any field of endeavor, could tell you about their failures, and we don't realize that there are some lessons that you can learn that you just can't learn it any other way, I would think, Michael Jordan will often talk about the amount of baskets that he threw that he missed, right? But people record the scores, the big scores, but nobody records all the misses. And the thing about it is that he missed more than most other players. In other words, he failed more than most other players. And this whole idea of nothing ventured, nothing gained, you understand, comes to mind as well. You have to put yourself out there, you have to try. And there are some secrets that come with failure that you can't get it any other way. Success just doesn't happen like that. So when he opened, I think it was about his second line when he said, "All men fall, the great ones get back up." That stuck with me because I know in my own personal life, you know, I mean, I could talk about failure whole night, and even in a lot of persons that come to me, a lot of persons that I support, whether in business or personally, the stories, I mean, it's littered with it. So it means to me that we need to change our attitude towards what we call failure. In fact, you will find in most societies where innovation is big, right? You understand that innovation comes with failure. You know, a lot of the things that we use today, the television, this platform here, all right, whoever was developing it failed many times before it is where it is today. So I think we need to somehow begin to talk more about failure and how we can use failure, and like in some cultures, almost celebrate it because it's a stepping stone to the uncommon achievement. You know, so those are my main takeaways.
Even as I listen to your contribution there, Roll, the word perspective shouted out at me in my mind. Perspective, because actually, if it is we read back the chapter, it's interesting, and we talked about this during the series. The whole idea of what failure is really about, and is failure really failure? We talked extensively about that, and when we look at this chapter and we look at his exact wording, he says, greatness is not the absence of a flaw, but a willingness to overcome it. So even here, as you know, just really complementing well a lot of the conversations that we've had. Even Mike Murdock didn't identify those experiences specifically as failures, but I really thought it noteworthy that he expressed it using the word a flaw. So that way, it's not necessarily, oh my God, it was terrible, it didn't go wrong, I failed, and all the bad feelings that go along with it. But it was a flaw. It didn't work the way you had intended, it didn't work the way you had preferred. But at the end of the day, you can get back up. And, you know, he talked about greatness being the willingness to overcome it, which means that the things that doesn't work the way that we planned for it, the way we prefer it, the way that we intended, even when we are crippled, we can still overcome. So, you know, even as I was listening to you, as you share, and you've shared many times in the series, quite so, that it's not about saying, oh my gosh, I have failed, but rather being able to acknowledge that, hey, this thing didn't work out the way that I thought, but yet we could move on. And just to share from Uncommon Achiever Paula. Paula is sharing with us that greatness is not the absence of the flaw, but the willingness to overcome, allow forgiveness. Not many people allow forgiveness, but if we place ourselves in the positions of others, then forgiveness comes easily. Yeah, so thank you for that contribution, Paula. I want to ask though, you know, earlier in the chapter, Mike Murdock said, when pressure increases, those around you are affected and influenced. And I wanted to ask, how do you all handle pressure in your personal and professional life to ensure that there is not major negative fallout among the people that are around you because of what you are going through? And I just really want to leave it as an open, you know, just open to the floor, anybody, any order.
Yeah, I guess not. I guess definitely this is an area where I go to the rock that is higher than I. You understand? And I can count so many experiences where you feel that you're in a crucible, where you feel that you've been pressured on all sides, and that's definitely time where I look up. You understand? I I talk to God. You understand? I seek His face. You understand? Because there are many times when comfort doesn't come from the sources you think it will come. And you have to encourage yourself. There's a scripture that talks about David encouraged himself in the Lord. And I've been there many, many times. So I know that there's a point where you it's you just can't find it within yourself sometimes. There are times when you can, hey, you square your shoulders and you face up to it. But sometimes pressure can be really overwhelming. You understand? Whether, like in my case, it's been financial pressure, where bill collectors are calling every day. You're getting a call you're owing or something like that. And in those situations, you really, at least for me, you understand, relying on God, relying on God's word, relying on the strength of God that emboldens me and helps me to make it through. I think that has been my number one. You know, for me, I am. The scripture talks about the role of worship. All these are the things that I have incorporated in my life to deal with times under pressure. Well, we know the other things, you talk to someone, you share, you communicate. We know those things. But for me, more than if I were to encourage someone more than anything else, get to a place where you develop a relationship with God. You understand? If you don't know God today, as you're listening to us, get to know Him, get to know God, get to know Christ as Lord and Savior. Allow Him into your life, and you will see the support that you need to overcome any kind of pressure, personal or otherwise. That for me is the starting point, and that's the end point. You understand? The support that I've received from a relationship with God in my life.
Yeah. As a compliment to that, I create rules for myself. Um, I know that I could get pretty intense. Um, so I have a rule where if I am under pressure, I intentionally smile more than I usually would, because something about making my face smiles helps uplift just my state of mind. This might not work for anybody else, but it works for me. So it's interesting that when I'm good or I'm in a good mood, I tend to look facially, I tend to look more serious. But if I am grossly upset, I spend the day smiling because it helps me with my mindset. I have a rule as well that I introduced at my school, and it's because I use it for me. And the rule is, if it doesn't help, if it doesn't make better, don't say it. And so I teach our kids that at school. So it helps them to create some boundaries when they get riled up or they're having their kid time during recess or whatever. But it really is a rule that I developed so that I don't, because at the end of the day, if you let yourself go, then you have all this apologizing to do, you have all the makeup and the relationship building and all the things that you have to do to clean up the mess that you made because you were under pressure and you didn't have the self-control, or you didn't maybe exercise the self-control. So again, that's like a rule for me. If it doesn't help, if it doesn't make better, don't say it. And that, as simple as it is, could sometimes be really hard. Like sometimes you're dealing with people, especially if it's personal. Oh my gosh, even worse. They could say really terrible things if it is you're in a moment. And even on the job, sometimes, people come out of character. But I say, what? If it's not gonna make it better, if it's not gonna help, I'm not gonna say it. So I'm being intentional about smiling. I am being intentional about not saying things. And the third, it's not a rule, but it's a thought that I have. Is my response going to be a demonstration of the love of God? And that one, if I'm not able to keep the smile, and I'm not saying I'm putting on a smile in a disingenuous way. I mean, I really am, I'm smiling. I'm choosing to stay in a place of gratitude in my mind, whatever I choose to think about. So if it's not smiling and if it's not curbing my tongue, I then ask myself, because sometimes it's not even about your words, it's about sometimes your body language, sometimes it's about your silence, sometimes it's just in the general response. So I ask myself, is this thing that I'm about to do, this way I'm about to respond, Does it represent the love of God? And if the answer is no, I challenge myself not to display that, so that it doesn't matter whether it's personal or professional. I keep it as something as important and close to my heart, that I want to be a representation of God's love. And again, sometimes that could feel challenging when you're dealing with contentious moments with people. But for me, I allow that to motivate me, and it helps me to maintain positive relationships with people, even with people that under normal circumstances it would be very difficult to have a positive relationship with them. It does help. Yeah, but Simone, what about you? How do you handle those types of experiences?
I will start by taking a deep breath in. I think for me, when I'm under pressure, I would feel it within my body. I would feel a sense of anxiety or nervousness. And generally, I would know these psychological signs and I would pay attention to it because I would want to know, okay, why are you feeling like this? So usually if it's because I'm in an environment or an atmosphere and there are other persons and maybe the way the conversation is going, that is causing the pressure. Or if it is that I feel that you have too much on your plate. And for me, when I have a lot on my plate, just thinking about the fact that you have a lot on your plate could really get me into a tailspin and make me feel like, whoo, it could sometimes like blank me out. So stopping to take that deep breath in helps me to regain my grounding, to think clearly, because I need to do some self-talk with me to say, okay, Simone, you'll need to approach this one thing at a time. So I need to talk myself through it. It's not always so automatic and a straight line. So for me, like Roel, my grounding is in the word and calling on Holy Spirit. So even as I take the deep breath in, I inhale Jesus. And when I exhale, it's hallelujah. And those are the two words that I use to help me come back grounded, to not get too perturbed, to not get too disoriented. Because once that starts to happen, you find your mind could be racing and thinking one way, and your mouth want to say something that you really shouldn't say at that time. So even if I have to respond and say something to someone, I'm very mindful, and generally I would think before I say something to make sure my words are phrased correctly. And I'm also mindful of my tone, because if I'm under pressure and it reflects outwardly by the way I speak and my tone and my body language, just as Mike Murdock made reference to, it will affect the persons in my space, because it means I'm giving off a type of energy that, believe it or not, even though they might be on the other side of the screen, because we're not face to face now in the office, they can pick up on it and it can cause them that level of anxiety and nervousness. So, as a leader and as an uncommon achiever and as someone who's mindful of what I do and the impact that it would have, I would take that breath to get me stable, grounded. I would say my prayer asking God, Holy Spirit, take control, help me. And then I would manage my tone, my voice, and the words that I say and use at that point.
Yeah. But you know
Alina,
the
one of the things,
sorry.
yeah, I just wanted to add, for me,
Sure.
I just recall one of the things that has always been helpful for me has been service. So I've found oftentimes it happened just by chance, but I inculcated it as a practice. When I'm under pressure, I find opportunity to serve others, to be of
Yeah.
value to some other persons. You mentioned the
Mm-hmm.
word perspective earlier, and I found that it helps me to gain perspective sometimes, and it helps me to stay in an attitude of gratitude. Because when you begin to connect with others sometimes and you begin to hear their stories, you understand? But even more than that, just the fact that you're able to put out and to release, you understand? Those things certainly have helped me to balance myself and gain a little equilibrium, and not be thrown off by the pressure. Even if it means just not thinking about it, sometimes there are things that you're going to have to come back to, but you come back to it in a better state of mind, feeling stronger, right? Feeling that you've made a difference, you've helped someone
Yeah.
else, and certainly understanding that we all going through these challenges, especially sometimes when you see some of the things that are challenging to persons, right? Some things that people call a challenge, you may not call a challenge. You understand? So it's all about perspective. So that is certainly something that has helped me as well.
Yes.
Yeah, because even with not so much with the story for me, but as a parallel, sometimes one of the things for me I could feel as though I'm under pressure is when I haven't found a solution to something, or I'm working on a project and I just say working right now. I haven't figured it out. And you know what I do? I go create a solution for somebody else. And so it's not really their story, but something about me solving somebody else's problems.
Yes,
It opens up the creative juices for me to solve my
yes,
own. So
yes,
I would just sit and think like, who has something going on and I could fix that up for them. No,
yes,
I'm so
yes,
serious. I'd be like, you need that? Hey, what going on? I could do that for you. Or sometimes I wouldn't
Wow.
even. I would know if I know, okay, this person has something happening, I would just do it and say, "Hey, I thought of you, and I thought you might be able to use this," and I just got it done. And by the time in the process of creating a solution for the other person, something in that experience opens up my mind, opens up my creativity. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
I know what I'm gonna do. Listen, it works every time. I keep finding
Um,
solutions for other people until those creative juices, those problem solving juices start falling in place. And for me, it works every time. And I really want to connect to it with something Simone said earlier, which I interpreted as what she does is she creates a solution. She looks for the solution even when she's trying to, navigate those pressure moments, and as she takes a deep breath in, a deep breath out, and she opens up her mind, I interpreted that as she's trying to find the solution. And
yes,
so,
yes.
we all have our
You,
ways.
you
Simone
know, there
breathes
was
deeply, and I help other people with their projects.
Yeah, there was well when you as Simone was speaking there, the other thing
Uh-huh.
that came to me is that Simone provided a kind of blueprint,
Hmm.
and I think it may be helpful to emphasize and underscore. Essentially, one thing what I got from what Simone was saying is that she gets to understand her triggers,
Yes.
right? And I think that's very important.
yeah.
Each of us need to know what are the things that trigger ourselves. Is it something a child would say? Is it something a spouse would say? Is it something a situation you've been placed in? Is it financial? Is it you need to know your triggers. But I think as well you need to know what the triggers, what results, what happens, the impact they have on you mentally and your body. Some people shut down, some people cry, some people scream, some people curse, yeah, some people avoid. So you need to understand your triggers, you need to understand how you respond, and then you need to find ways to mitigate or treat with it. So I think I love that, little blueprint that Simone provided. They're very powerful.
And there's something else because now that I'm working from home fully, one of the things I stumble across that I do when I feel pressured, believe it or not, I find myself in the kitchen checking the sink to see what wares need washing up. And I'm like, so it became so unconscious until one day I said, hey, every time, even if I don't feel pressured, there's a point where I'll take a walk, go in the kitchen, check the sink, and wash wares, and like
Therapy.
it's a little rejuvenator. Yeah, it's like a therapy. It's just something that I do. So I realize that. So I think even as we try to figure out what to do, it's important for us to be sensitive about the things we are doing in the moment and why we're doing it. That level of consciousness is so very important. And I think that's what stands out in this chapter.
Yes, and you definitely are not alone, Simone. You are washing the wares, and Chanel is cleaning because she said that having the right coping
Yes.
mechanism helps when you're under pressure.
Yeah.
As a parent, when I feel
Wow.
overwhelmed, cleaning helps me to relax. So you see, you're,
Yeah.
you're you're not alone with your washing of
Wow.
the wares. I
Chanel
don't know
high
if
five girl. I know what you're talking
I don't know if
about.
Chanel washing was like you or she's sweeping floor, what she doing, but definitely cleaning is the underlying score there, yeah? Great. I wanted to ask, how does it work for you in the opposite though, when sometimes you're not the person under pressure, but someone close to you, a colleague, a family member, whoever, they're under pressure and it's causing tension to be directed towards you. How do you handle that?
I'm
Yeah, I would. Oh,
thinking.
you're thinking, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You have already answered, Ron?
Well, I mean, for me, I don't react. You know, I step back to try to understand, what's happening. Maybe ask a couple questions. So I can understand what's taking place and why. Especially if the response is not typical, it's not a way they would normally respond. It then is a trigger for me that says something is happening here. So then, of course, I would inquire, you understand, or try to show sympathy or empathy, whichever is appropriate at the point in time, and certainly try to encourage. So I tend not to be too off put by it, because I understand everybody has their moments. That's how I see it. Everybody has their moments, and you can never really understand it until you get into a similar situation. So once I'm able to pull back and able to connect with them, then it gives you a sense of what kind of support is needed. In some cases, some people only want you to give them a hug. Sometimes it's a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes it's a prayer. You understand? Sometimes it's a word of encouragement. So I guess it varies depending on your assessment of what the situation is about. Sometimes people just need space, you know okay, this doesn't seem to be a good time, let me connect with you another time. So that's really how I would have dealt with it, not trying not to react to what I'm getting, all right, and try to respond. Really, that's how I would treat with it.
Yeah, and I agree with Roll. Every situation is different and it requires me. So, based on how we just shared about when we are under pressure, and as Mike Murdock said in this chapter, when we have to treat with persons who are under pressure, we need to remember our own situation when we're under pressure and how it feels. So I know, for example, at work, when I need to get reports from persons, and let's say this weekend here, long weekend, so next week, which is the first week of the month when reports are due, is a short week. So for me, it's important for me to be mindful of that and to honor a person and let them know, hey, this was an extended weekend. Um, the report, although it might be due on X date, you can give me it the day after. And I will send, I normally send a monthly reminder at the end of the month or the first day of the month to get it in time 5 days a week. So I will not ask you for something to make you feel under pressure, right? In terms of the timing of it. And I think that's very important that when we approach persons, we have to be mindful of what may be happening at the time. If it's not something where, let's say there's less time to respond and there's more time, or just out of the blue, someone may explode. Like Roll said, For me, I tell myself, nah, this is not how Roel normally responds. Roel, I'm using you. This is not how Roel normally responds, So maybe something is up. So I will step back. I will step back and I will give it some time before I come again to talk with him. The reality is, because we're moving about in life, and I'm not just doing something for all or for you, Alina, but there's family, there's work, there's ministry, there's church, there's this. So sometimes we could miss these cues when persons may be under pressure. So it might happen when they explode, or they give a tone, or they just short, and then that might cause you to realize, maybe I was pushing too. Maybe, I missed something. So all these cues are important for us as achievers, for us, listen, just as regular people. I like people to be considerate of me, and, I like to be considerate of people. My pet peeve, though, is when you jump the line in front of me. I will talk to you about it in a very stern tone. But I mean, generally, we do need to exercise, as Paula would have mentioned last night, that measure of love and care to persons is very important.
I was just thinking as well from an organizational perspective, just how far we've come. Huh? I can recall a time when the management practice was leave your problems by the door, right? And persons in HR, and of course at that time they used to call it the personnel department, they didn't handle those issues. You have problems, we don't want your problems. When you come here to work. And it's amazing now we're at a stage where we're talking about the whole person. We have EAP programs. We provide counseling, we provide coaching, we provide
Persons, yeah.
so all kinds of things. So I think this is an acknowledgement, at least in the business context, that we need support and people need support. Employees need support if they are to be productive. Interestingly, is that really mirrored in our personal life? Have personal relationships travel the same road as organizational realities? Do we really acknowledge that in relationships we need support, we need counsel, we need to cater to the whole person, we need to give each other space and time? So it's just a teasing thought I'm putting out there. And is it that in our personal lives we're lagging behind corporate or business? Just a thought I'm teasing out. You certainly, at least I don't hear this kind of discussion taking place in relationships, where the husband say, okay, she needs, whatever time, you just, have your time. We all demanding, we all demand so much of each other. I don't know if we really give each other the space to treat with or acknowledge, So for example, if I were to speak from a male perspective, I know certainly some more men can do with trying to understand the pressures of a housewife or a homemaker. You understand? At the same token, there may be some spouses that need to spend some time to understand the pressures of the work that your wife or husband is going through. All right? And be able to adjust and be ready and prepared for them. So just a thought.
I definitely think it does happen in relationships, but I really think it's not a big conversation, because maybe there's an assumption um that it's assumed that this is what we do, so there is no need to talk about it. And then
Right.
there is not a need to talk about it for many, because there's no money being spent on the effort. Companies talk about it because they're spending money on it. They're paying another organization to handle that EAP. They're talking about it because they want to make people aware that they value their employees, because it makes them look good. But um, who is a wife going to talk to about all the understanding she gives to her husband? It's not necessarily a badge or a compliment. Or if a husband says, I support my wife by XYZ, nobody's going to clap his hands and say kudos and publish a newspaper article about it. So I don't think
Maybe we should.
Probably, yeah. But I don't think it's that it's not happening at all. I really do believe it does happen. But because there is no great national or group level recognition to be given for supporting or think about a mother with their child and how much understanding
We
or father and the child.
we have to begin a family awards. We need to award husbands and
Maybe,
wives.
but I think it's because there is no award system or reward system for that. It's just part
Taken
and
for
parcel
granted.
of the package. Okay, like I could tell you, right? I don't think he would mind. So, so I was sharing with
I'm
Roll. I was
taking
telling him
notes, you go ahead. I'm
I was
taking
telling
notes.
I was telling Roel the other day about lavender oil and how it's such a good oil in aromatherapy and it helps to relax. So like when my husband works and I know he's tired and he's in pain and his muscles are hurting, I have my mixture with my lavender oil that I use to rub him down so he'll get a deep sleep and he'll wake up feeling refreshed the next day. Ain't nobody gave me no clap for that. But he's gonna have a great day. But he's gonna sleep well, he's gonna wake up refreshed, his skin is gonna be glowing, he's gonna be in a good mood the next day because somebody who he didn't ask to do it put something in place and figured out this it's not a drug, there's no side effect, and all these benefits, and he's wonderful because this person named wife is going to rub him down with this lavender oil mixture at night before he knocks out to go to bed. Is that a story? I would tell people no. It doesn't it
Right.
technically from a societal point of view, even a group interaction. Outside of this, using it as an example for something. It doesn't count for
and
anything. There's
this
no
is why
award.
and this is why these stories need to pass on, and that's the challenge
So
right
it
there. And that's why
happens.
upcoming generations miss these stories.
Yeah.
It doesn't pass on. These stories need to be passed on to our children so that
Mhm.
they can inculcate the same values and practices. And that's where we get a watering down, because the young people come out with expectations. You
But you know
understand?
what? I think in addition to stories, I would say equally as important are the demonstrations, that we want to make sure. And I think we talked about it a lot in this too, being a good example. Like a lot of what, let's say, I have learned about being a wife is not because somebody sat me down and explained something to me. It's because when I was a child growing up, my grandmom lived next door to us. And so if my mom was visiting my grandmom, when 4 o'clock come and that car pulling in before I turn the gap, before that car turned to drive into the driveway, bye, yeah, mommy, bye. And she home. It was just like a normal thing. She was gone because she husband reached home. So she gone. And so she could be
Ah.
by my grandmother chilling. Hey, mommy, how you going? Ting, ting, ting. But when 4 o'clock come and she see that car, Drew, you're right. You ready to eat? You want to take out your
Mm.
food now? It was
Mhm.
demonstrated. So I'm not saying that's the best way. So please don't stone me down. I'm not saying it's the best way. I'm not saying it's the right way. I'm just saying that is what I
Demonstration.
saw, so it
Yeah.
became my instinctive modeling. So now
Yes.
when mine reach home, honey, you're ready for food. You want anything? Not because I'm a servant or anything negative. I'm not a doormat. It's just what I learned from what I saw, and I made a decision that I want to continue this. I like this. I want to be able to serve in this way. So I think that in addition to the storytelling, that's really important. But the demonstrations, and I'll tell you a quick little story, and I sure roll with giggle. I was teaching a business class the other day, and I asked a student, we were talking about sustainable development and globalization and so whatever we said, and he said, I don't know. And I was like, what? I was like, do you know what your parents do for a living? I was like, you need to have a lot more conversations with your parents because I guarantee you, your parents spend a lot of time dealing with this topic. And the student is looking at me like, for real? Okay. It was the funniest thing. So the thing about it is that the conversations are equally as important, whether it's
Yes.
demonstrating
Yeah.
family relationship, whether it's involving your kids in your professional life, so they learn skills. Like I feel proud of past students of mine who grew up in homes where parents were business owners, and not that the parents sat them down, but because they demonstrated in the home what it meant to put the equipment together, this and that, they just learned it naturally. So that once they got big, it was like a natural progression. Why would I
Naturally.
work for somebody that's in their mind? Because they saw entrepreneurship being demonstrated. They understood the sacrifices, they understood what it took to put it together. So now, outside of all the careers there are in the world, they also have another option that is a smooth transition, entrepreneurship, because it was demonstrated. So I think it applies both personally, professionally, in the workplace, in every area. And as Roel said, we tell the stories. And as I'm complimenting what he said, we demonstrate, because when you put it all together, it builds for the understanding we need to forgive, to have compassion, to have empathy. And when need be, do like Simone and take that deep breath and figure out how to start it all over again. So I want to ask you, what are your final sharings as you consider not just this chapter, but the reading? What is your big takeaway after book club conversation series 6? I'm just going to open the floor to you guys.
Well, Lina, I also want to say when I shared about taking that deep breath, it was really for me to take a pause first to say, you know what, I just need a moment here instead of trying to just plow through it. So that in itself helps to clear the fogginess and get me
Yes.
back grounded. And as you were talking about demonstrating and not just speaking, I was saying to myself, Lord, I hope my children are taking a cue from me washing the ways because
You know what? They may be taking the cue. Now, we have to be honest, they mightn't do it when they're in your house, but they're taking the cue. So by the time they get into their own,
oh Lord, so I have to wait.
so don't be discouraged if you don't see
Oh
the fruits of
Lord,
it right now. It
yes.
may or may not bring the harvest now, but by the time they get into their own, you're definitely going to see it, man. You're going to see it.
So it's coming. I like that. It's coming. Um,
Yes.
so final thoughts. You know, when I saw give those who fail a chance to try again, which is the name of the chapter, you know, this could have easily been at the top of the book as well. Because, like Raul said, you know, really and truly, if we were to think about all the missed opportunities or not hitting the target that we have had over the years, it will be quite a bit. But you know what I realized? For me, I attended a workshop and the question was asked, share one of your earliest failures. And I thought back, and I say, oh, my earliest failure was when I went to do my driving test, the practical on the road, and I failed. So I was like, but Simone, you were 19 then. That was your earliest failure. And then I realized it wasn't my earliest failure, you know. But because when I'm doing something, I am in the moment with it. I am enjoying the experience. I'm immersed in it so that it doesn't seem as if it's a failure because I get so much out of it. I learn so much from the experience and about myself so that I will, when I go again, I go from a better and more informed place. In addition to which, coming out of the experience, I now am able to share with somebody else so that they don't have to make the same or similar mistake that I did. And then also coming out of that too, I realized I like being in an experience, experiencing things in life, growing from it, and then sharing it with others. And that's one of the reasons why I'm involved now in Create Your Own Narrative workshop. So I would say to persons, you know what? Put aside the inhibitions and the doubts and the fears, and why don't you just give it a try? Why don't you just make a step out at it, right? And tell yourself, listen, I am going after this. What's the worst that could happen? I mightn't get it the first time. So what? I'm going to enjoy the experience. It's all about perspective. And that's what I would say.
Definitely, because I'm thinking, as you think, talking about that there, Simone, um, I'm thinking about even my perspective on quote unquote failure. And, it just kind of got rekindled in my mind that I don't have a focus on failure. That even when I think about the work that I do in terms of business support and so on, the whole idea is supporting professionals and entrepreneurs so we could experience success daily. And I have a big thing about that, experiencing success daily, because I'm not a big advocate for the big bangs, but I believe success is an experience that could be had daily. And I see it like this: if I'm working on something and it doesn't pan out the way I originally planned for it to, I still have experienced success in that I have just learned what doesn't work. So I'm
Yeah.
still experiencing a level of success daily. And even as Chanel is sharing with us, that sometimes all we need is a second chance, because failure is that opportunity to learn and grow
Oh,
as a person. And again, perspective. And I think that's probably going to be our watchword for today, perspective, because it's all about the perspective role. Even as you think about the readings in series 6, what's your big takeaway?
Overall, the importance of intentionality. I say it's big. I mean, we've spoken about that every time. The uncommon dream, the uncommon achievement doesn't just happen.
yeah.
You don't just stumble upon it. We have to be intentional about how we think, how we talk to ourselves, the persons we have in our lives, the atmosphere we create. It doesn't just happen, you know. And if we look at persons who have made uncommon achievements, we'll begin to realize that there is some system. I know, Alina, you spend some time talking about systems and your own systems. There is a system. There's a way. You understand? There are steps, and it's not a hit and miss thing. So I think that's a big thing for me, intentionality. I think the other thing for me would be courage, especially when you treat with the question about fear, you know. The reality is that most persons who achieve stuff, they sometimes they're afraid just like you and me. And then I'm talking about terrible fear. You understand? Sometimes they're immobilized, but they do it anyway. They move forward anyway. And that speaks to courage, the importance of courage. And again, this whole idea of perspective comes in, because if we could change fear, which we all know the popular acronym, false evidence appearing real, to face everything and rise, then we could begin to, you know, challenge ourselves towards the uncommon dream. I think more than anything else, it's mindset. You understand? We have to adopt the right mindset. Again, something we need to be intentional about. And to do that, Alina and Simone, one of the big things is to read. What do we read? You understand? What do
Yeah.
we read? You know, reading, like what we've done over the last 31 days, is one of those things that helps to jump. You know, it pushes us into other realities that it would take us a lifetime to try to learn those lessons. But
Yes.
we get a fast track. That's one of the values of books like these and writings of individuals like Murdock. You know, it pushes us forward. Very important. We have to, there's a scripture that says, be ye transformed by the renewal of your mind. And
Yes.
often we're slaves in our minds. We're trapped, we're in a mental prisons, and we have to break free. And you begin to realize that a lot of the things that you think are holding you back, it's in your mind, you know. whether we're talking about lack of money, whether we're talking about a poor relationship, whether we're talking about lack of success on the job, whatever it is, the limiting, the limit is here. You know, I mean, I'm sure most of us, anyone listening in now, or we see the life of any uncommon achiever, they will tell you they started at zero, very humble beginnings.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget. So I
Yeah.
think I will encourage persons more than anything else to begin feeding their mind. The books they read, the songs they listen to, the environment, the atmosphere that they're
Yes.
into. Start feeding your mind, changing your mind, and that will help to jettison you forward into that uncommon dream.
And even Paula has shared with us her big takeaway where she says, at the beginning of this book, I thought it would be all about building businesses. And at the end, I'm recognizing that it is about starting with ourselves. Once we start there, the sky is the
Yes.
limit. Thank you for this experience. And we have another big takeaway here that's Chanel is sharing. I want to encourage all to use this book as a daily guide. I will read this book over and over again as it pushes us to think about our life perspective, most definitely. So, even as we're winding, I want to ask a question, guys. Why book club? For so many people, whether it's a commitment to have to read a book, or the idea of joining in a group with others to discuss it, or coming on screen, which is so frightening for a lot of people. There's a lot of reasons why people might run away from an experience like this. So I want to ask you, for you, why book club? Why book club conversations with Alina series, whatever the series may be? Why book club?
There's a saying that leaders are readers. I love to read, um, but the takeaway from it, how it impacts your life, your perspective, what you do, how you do it, why you do it. It is fertilizer for growth. And, it's one of those things, just like Chanel said, she said, I'm going to read this book again. And, the next time Chanel reads this book, because Chanel was on with us, the next time any of us read the book, we're going to see different things standing out because what it's talking about reflects differently on us depending on where we are in our life's journey. And definitely, if you want to grow your perspective so that you can add value in different circles that you're in, whether it's business, whether it's family, whatever it might be, you definitely want to be reading. But book club conversations, it's like you have a partner there with you because we're committing to do this every day in this case and encouraging each other along. What is so rich about the experience for me is coming on and hearing the perspective from Alina, from Roll, from Chanel, from Paula, from Kevin, from Varun. I remember Varun, from Mommy Ingrid, all those experiences, all the perspectives. That is the enriching thing about it. It adds value to who you are as a person.
You're waiting for me to add to that? What can I add to that? Everything that Simone just said. Yeah, I guess I would say as well, Obama said something once, and I'm paraphrasing, right? He says that, we live in our heads and there are things that we talk about and opinions that we have. But he says if you really want to grow, put your opinions out for public scrutiny. You understand? Put yourself, get engaged in some discussion about anything that you think you believe. And at the end of it, you'll really get to understand what you believe, what you think you believe, what you really believe, and what you need, what belief you need to change. All right. And I think forums like these provide an opportunity for you to test some of what you think you know. What some of the things you think you understand. I know it demands some courage, but if you are that uncommon achiever and you want to see growth in your life, you need to put yourself, and there's a practice that I have made, to put myself in situations like these because I know what comes out. Even though sometimes you feel you may fall flat on your face, hey, all that is part of the process. So I've enjoyed it. It has certainly caused me to be a lot more disciplined in approaching my reading. And certainly because of this particular focus, it has certainly encouraged me to delve into the word a lot more, into scripture. And I mean, all around, it just has been a great, rewarding experience. So I look forward to future book club conversations. I don't know if I can make one day every day for a whole month, but I can certainly be a part of of sessions like these. And I think we need more like this, so that at different levels, different age groups, so we can begin to discuss some very important issues that as the one we discussed. So it was fun. I enjoyed it, and all the best to everyone who's listening on. You know, I'm really happy for those that responded to the call to be a part, and I'm sure you can identify growth for yourself. And see you next time.
Yeah, I want to just say too that sometimes because of all the persons who shared, it's like everyone coming with a piece of the puzzles. So like Michelle and Sherlyn, Tema International, sometimes I remember there was a chapter and I was like, I wonder how to really connect with this chapter. And then Michelle will come and she will drop it and it will open up like this flower just blooming. Or Sherlyn will be there and add the excitement and the pizzazz. And it's like, oh, wow, yeah, So it's like everybody putting the pieces of the puzzles together. And, I really have to say, Kipruna, who said, yes, I'm going to come on. And she came on and she shared. And it helps to sharpen you as an individual in terms of preparing you to be able to, to share a conversation or discuss something to broaden your mind. And of course, I always admire you, Alina, and how you're able to do it so comfortably and your level of commitment. There are things that the way you spoke about demonstration, and you've demonstrated over these 31 days and with the other series and any things you do that I know I can't do some of the things that you do. But you know what my takeaway is from you? The quality with which you do things. And it makes me say, you know what? I want to raise my standard. I want to raise my level or my quality because of the contributions I would have heard from everyone who was on. There's always a rich takeaway from it. So, Alina, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on here again on Book Club Conversations.
Yes, and thank you to everyone who has participated because certainly, the book club conversation series would not be a success without the contributions, the participation, the viewership. So we're grateful. I'm grateful to everyone, whether you came on in the virtual studio, whether you're looking on live, or you're watching the replay, whether because you subscribed to the channel or you shared a video, whatever part you played, certainly it was important. And even as we close this series, I want to close with a quote from Mike Murdock, and it's not from this book. It actually is from another book he wrote, which is The Uncommon Dream, that we did in 2020. And in The Uncommon Dream, Mike Murdock said, if you want something that you've never had before, you have to be willing to do something that you've never done before. And for some of us, that something might be to read a book. For some of us, that doing that something might be to participate and to have dialogue with others about topics of transformation. Because for me, the most important people are the people who show up because we are being transformed. I truly believe it. We are being transformed as we go through this journey, whether you read it before, read it before. You heard about it before, you didn't hear it. It doesn't matter what it is. As Simone shared a moment ago, there is a new light that is shed because of the season that you're in to prepare you for the thing that is to come. So, for all us uncommon achievers, those who are here, those who joined us before but they couldn't make it in tonight, for everyone, I want to encourage us, keep being willing to push the boundaries.
Yeah.
Keep being willing to discover what is in you that you haven't tapped into as yet, and be encouraged that when the tough times come, tough times are not to break you. Tough times are to cause you to take Simone's part of a process, to take that breath, and while you're taking that breath, think of yourself as a toolbox. Everything you need is already in you. You just ain't discover it as yet. So look on the inside for that strength, that creativity, that awakening, that resourcefulness. Take a look on the inside and see what is there to be pulled out. So as we let the triggers of circumstances cause us to become introspective, we can now walk the uncommon path of the thing that is to come, because we are those uncommon achievers. So for the final time in Book Club Convo Series 6, have a good night. Roland, Simone, thank you for being in studio with me tonight.
Bye.
And until the next series, take care and stay on that course, that journey for being that uncommon achiever.